But it doesn't mean that we don't cover news from Copilot, because we will now be Microsoft 365 Boost. No, I'm just kidding.
I think we'll
I
just
can
be
still tell
Boost,
by your
but we'll
face that
see.
you're like, no, don't. It's like, no, we're not.
Or we'll
Okay.
just go to the foodie one that we talked about before. But that's
Yeah, the foodie boost. Yeah. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Power Platform Boost podcast, your timely source of Power Platform news and updates with your hosts, Nick Dolman and Ulrike Ackerbeck.
all right.
Hey, Nick.
now we're recording.
So we're not live after all. So we've been struggling for 4 years to do a live podcast recording, and today we tried. This is the fourth attempt to not make a live recording because it defaulted to live stream for the last 3 attempts. So yeah,
which we may do someday, but not today.
Yeah, because it was fun. It said connect to connect to channel, connect to YouTube, LinkedIn. It seemed very simple. So maybe you would just do that for fun one day, and just turn on the live stream. Who knows? But okay, enough of that. How are you?
I'm good. Yep, it was. It's right in the middle of summer. Of course it's warm out. We expecting some thunderstorms. I'm still busy with a lot of client work, which is good. Wrapping things up on a few projects and kind of getting excited for new ones into the fall. And yeah, just enjoying things. Really, really cool. Hopefully everybody's enjoying their summer vacations. Hopefully get a bit of time to rest and recharge. But of course, there's always new stuff happening with the Power Platform. So let's maybe.
Oh yeah, definitely. We've seen some. So we also saw a few waves from EPPC. Just keeps on giving. There's so many posts, so many people talking about their experience, and it shows on my feed at least the impact that EPPC really had on the community. I love seeing all these posts, and also they released recordings of the keynotes, which I absolutely love. So if you missed it, if you weren't there or you were busy at the days, I didn't get to see Chris O'Brien's because I was busy doing community stuff at that point. So I had a roundtable, but I got to see the recording and I absolutely loved his keynote. It was very different and people were raving about it when we were there. So I loved that they recorded it so I could watch it afterwards. Did you kind of see any of these in person or from the recording?
Yeah, I saw Leon's and Ryan's live, of course. Like Ryan's was day one. Of course, it was really good. We talked a little bit about it on the last episode while we were there, but then Leon's was on again. Now, Leon's just a bundle of energy as well. What I like about, we're talking about Leon Welicki from Microsoft. He is kind of underneath him is like a lot of the Power Apps and Power Pages and a lot of these things. And of course, full of energy, talking about the future. Did talk a few actual real world implementations of people using the Power Platform. One of them was my client Provence, which I am just wrapping up a project with right now, which was pretty interesting to kind of see their name up there. And like I was kind of poking beside me, like, yeah, that's one of my clients. I'm working with them right now. So just to see all this kind of interconnect and things like that. I did not see Chris O'Brien's, but I do appreciate the EPPC publishing these keynotes. And again, to the entire crew of EPPC, like you guys pull off such a great conference. Like Kevin and Bridget and Ella and all the others. I can't I can't remember all of your names, but you know who you are. Kudos to you for pulling off a great conference. And of course, yeah, my LinkedIn for the last week has just been filled with recaps and posts. Of course, if you didn't go, you're probably crippling FOMO right now. But overall, it is really good. And how they treat the speakers and everything like that too is just top notch. Such an amazing week. I'm still kind of buzzing from all the information and just the whole community around it. So great work. And yeah, Yeah, amazing. And thank you for publishing these keynotes so we can go back and review and catch up on what we missed.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I loved it. And it's so fun to see what an impact it's having. And also you see Microsoft being very dedicated to this event as well by just how many people and how many senior people they send. It's a big deal. So if you can, and I know I have a colleague that came with us and he absolutely loved it and is also buzzing from all the things he learned and also the affirmation that he knows what because he came in kind of not knowing kind of where he was in do I get it? Is there anything I don't know? Where am I? And he's like, no, I realize I do know this stuff. I am at the cutting edge. I do know about the newest thing. And there was very little news to him when he came there, which is a great affirmation to kind of know where you are and how far ahead you are. And I also wanted to mention Chris's keynote because I watched it back. And something he talked about, which came up again in another post, the SaaS apocalypse or the SaaS apocalypse, I think they call it. Because what Chris did with this keynote is he touched on a few of the sensitive subjects because he is not a Microsoft employee, right? So he can say a lot of things that the others couldn't. And he is actually pointing a finger at something that make a lot of us nervous. How do you stay relevant and how do you make sure that you have a place in this space going forward with all the new things that are happening with AI. And he drew the parallels between kind of new advancements in other areas of the world, kind of the internet and the smartphone and all those things, but also back to the car, back to TV, back to the light bulb. And he's like, well, when the light bulb first came around, people were saying how it's going to disrupt our whole society, how it's going to change everything. And people are against it. And also, what he didn't say, but we've heard this before, is that actually light bulbs did change the world. Light bulbs made it possible to work longer hours. It meant we were no longer just reliant on the sun for our daily rhythms. It means that people up north, like where I live, we get to spend more of our day outside or inside and work longer during winter. But also there's research now accumulating hundreds of years of research that shows that actually it did disrupt a lot of our physiology in a way that our bodies work and our sleep patterns in a negative way. So, and the same goes for AI. Point is, just as with social media and kids or smartphones and kids, we don't know if it's harmful or not because we don't have the data until it's too late. The same was where the light bulbs, sure, there's a lot of great things that came with, superficial light, but we didn't have the data to show if it was harmful or not as a greater whole until it was too late. By the time we had that data, it was adopted. And the same thing is going to happen with AI. I'm sure there's a lot of benefits and there's a lot of negative impacts that AI is going to have on our society. By the time we have enough data to know for sure, it's going to be too late. So there's no way of changing the trajectory, to stop it. We just have to go with it. And I'm sure it's going to be positive and negative effects on society as a whole. But I do want to kind of shout out to Chris for being brave enough to ask the hard questions and to take us through the rationale of what it is that we need to do as individuals and as companies to make sure we stay ahead. And this SaaS apocalypse is real. When everyone can make an app and anyone can make a service, what is your unique offering? What is it that you can bring to the table that no one else can? So, and that kind of brought me on to Steve Merdu's post that we saw this week, where he says, I can't wait for the cost of AI to go way up. And I think what he means by that is that there's a lot of slop, a lot of AI slop, and a lot of people making application that maybe they shouldn't, or there's an application for everything, 100 shitty little apps kind of thing. And he wants the bar to go up, the price to go up, so that only the people that should be making applications and creating software does, and that those who shouldn't can't afford to. I think that's kind of my take on it. What's your take on it?
No, it's sort of the same thing. I also don't think, I think like everything else we talk about, we're into this resource management kind of wave right now, because as of July 1st, Microsoft started charging for co-work, for example. And then all of a sudden you saw people, I don't want to say freaking out, but all of a sudden what they've been working for the last few months for essentially for free now started actually costing money. To generate that PowerPoint now cost you tangible money. To generate the code is costing you tangible money. Now, it always sort of did, but now with co-work being something that ties into credits, it is now you kind of have to allocate, okay, is it worth it? Or how much credits do we give to our employees? If we have a very productive employee that's using this stuff, are they going to run out after the first week? What do you do? Or do they go 3 weeks kind of back to the manual way? Or are you going to increase their allocation? What's the return on investment on that? I think we're sort of, and then along with that, we do see that Fable that we talked about last time has now been reactivated in Claude. And it said it was I found the messaging very confusing. Oh, you can use it for free at 50% of your capacity, but after July 19th, you're just going to start costing you usage credits. And I'm like, what does this mean? I already pay a subscription fee. What's going to happen? Does this mean I'm going to have to pay extra? So I asked Claude, do I now start paying extra for this? And it kind of broke it down, kind of, well, yes and no, here's how it all works. And it kind of made sense. And I won't go through the whole details, but we are sort of, I think everybody's kind of putting the brakes or pumping the brakes a little bit now because they're realizing there is a resource cost. But that being said, if you remember, and I, now again, this is the Nick going back to the old man segment. I remember working for a dial-up internet provider. Yep, exactly. Where we, at that time, internet dial-up, you could get a cheap internet plan, but you were only allowed to surf 1 hour per day. You had 10 hours per month. And then you were always careful of when you surfed or when you checked your email or whatever, because you only had those 10 hours. Here after a year or two, and then of course some of these providers starting, well, now you can get unlimited internet, unlimited dial-up internet. So do we connect it all the time? What would that cost? And these types of things. And then, these things evolve. I don't think we're going to run into a place where we have a 2-tiered thing in terms of token usage or AI usage. I think we'll get to a point where AI will be just the same as internet or phone or anything else. We won't think about it. Even we think about phone paying for long distance, that isn't even a conversation anymore. 20 years ago it was. It's we wait till 9 o'clock before. We talked about this last time too. You said about going on the internet after 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Because then when the office is shut down, then you could use it as a private person because then it was cheaper.
So
I love it.
Yeah. So I do think AI is going to be the same way, just because there's so many different companies vying for the attention, right? There's not one single AI provider. We have OpenAI, we have Anthropic, we have Microsoft with their models. These are, and of course the DeepSeek coming from the Chinese companies as well. So there's going to be, we're in an arms race, but also availability. Now, of course, we do have the building new data centers. So there is a physical limitation there of trying to catch up on that, but the technology is just going to increase. So it's an interesting conversation right now, but I also don't think it's going to be as dire as maybe Steve is predicting. And he might be wrong, or I might be wrong, or he might be absolutely right. We'll see soon enough. I think right now we are seeing sort of the allocation of tokens, or the make sure you're not burning everything coming from companies and that kind of thing. I know for myself, I've bumped up to the highest level of Claude, but it is paying for itself on a daily basis, the full subscription price in terms of my productivity. So it's going to be definitely fun to watch. And I'm sure we're going to discuss this more and more as we go through it. So again, no definitive answer here, but the other point you talk about, the SaaScopolis, about building apps. And it's why would I go and buy Dynamics 365 customer service when I can just go into Claude and get it to build it for me? And I think it still goes back to why couldn't we just build a ticketing system on top of the Power Platform using regular Dataverse and Power Apps? Funny, because this is what Steve essentially did when he created Rapid Start CRM, a very much a watered down version of CRM, and he kind of sold that as an application. What's stopping you or I from building our own Rapid Start CRM? we could do that even a couple years ago, just building regular things on top of the Power Platform. I even did sessions on this, if you remember, from Scottish Summit and a few other places. You don't need a CRM, you need a Power App, and really about kind of building these apps. But that being said, what the value that these software companies bring, like maybe, a Microsoft or whatever, or you or I, is the years of experience that we have. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. We know what customers will react to. So yeah, we talk about Sally in accounting. It's like, or, Bob, the sales guy, is he going to vibe code his own CRM system? We've been seeing this for years. Bob has been vibe coding his Excel spreadsheet 10 years ago, but he doesn't know the ins and outs and how all the features work and how we can extend this. So I think there's still a lot of value, especially for solution architects, for people with experience, but we're using the AI tools to deliver the SaaS solutions, the software, whether it's customized, whatever. What Microsoft provides and other providers provide is the platforms, the security, the governance, the things that we don't think about. They've baked into these platforms that, yes, we have AI running on top, but we still have that nice sandbox that's going to protect our data, protect us from outside things. So I do realize I'm soapboxing quite a bit here, but it's very interesting, these conversations we're having now and how things are changing so rapidly. But I also go back to that point of we still need people with experience to help build out and design and architect these solutions. Just really a lot of the tooling has changed around that.
Yeah. But I think also what Chris is saying is that actually the whole business model changes, and the conversations inside the boardrooms that normal kind of consultants don't have access to is our business model valid? Do we make money going forward? If you're 10x your efficiency, how many developers do we need? And also, who's going to use these applications? And if you see on the stock market, the SaaS applications, their numbers are down, they're devalued because they don't have a future, and people see that. So it's hard. It's a hard truth, but it's probably also true. So, I mean, and also he talks to what you can do as an individual and kind of elevate yourself to the next level, the next tier of conversation. Is this worth automating through automation or workflow or AI? What is the best strategy here? What can we do about these processes? How is this business model? How is this business, the ROI on this business case? Those kinds of scenarios. Elevate yourself to be able to have these discussions on a higher level, because the developer, if you're not already a great developer and you can use this to amplify what you're already doing, then don't start because there's not enough room. There's already too many great developers out there that know their stuff and going to be 10 times as productive. Find something else to do. But that's just my take on it. Okay, let's move on. We're ranting. Yeah, so we have a few other interesting things, and I just wanted to use this as a segue because Scott Hanselman also had a post this week, a video where he's on his bike and he's paddling away and he's making the case that to exercise your muscle, you need tension. So it's time under tension. TUT is something I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yep. Very, very, yep. We could talk about my current training plan right now, but yeah, go on.
Yeah. So, and it says, if you send a forklift to the gym, weights were lifted, but did you lift them? No. So you need to apply tension. Make sure you have resistance training, right? That's how you build strength. And if you don't do that to your brain, it's going to wither away. We've talked about this already, but I just find when Scott kind of goes on LinkedIn and posts this video now, he does that for a reason, because now he's seeing so much slop from so many different angles, and someone's going to have to clean this up. And if you don't know what you're doing, AI is just going to amplify your mistakes. So if there's ever a time to stop and to start applying tension or resistance so that your brain don't wither away and actually keeps growing, then this was the time. And I feel this myself. I mean, just a few weeks away from the computer, away from the keyboard, I'm slower as I'm typing. It takes my mind a while to get back into the game, to get warmed up, to kind of go into the reasoning thinking. This is a muscle, and I haven't used it for a while because I've been on vacation, but I really feel like going back that it's hard. Yeah, and that scares me.
Well, I totally agree, and I get the I totally get the time under tension analogy there, because you're right, because it is, lifting the weights. And I joke when I'm at the gym, because I get into conversations with people. I get really chatty at the gym. You probably, no surprise there, but I'm like, one of the things I say, okay, I got to go. Those weights won't lift themselves, so I got to get back into the routine and picking stuff up. But of course, if I get a program every week from my trainer, um, it's always a little bit more, a little bit more. There's a whole series of sets. We make variations, and that makes me stronger. What I like about AI and how I work, and part of my workflow, is I don't just create a black box and give my agents a description saying, I need to build this piece of code, go. I kind of been working through it piece by piece, saying, okay, overall, here's the structure. Again, let's go in planning mode. And I work with it kind of like, here is what we need to do. Here's this particular function. And when it generates the code, because it does it very quickly, very efficiently, I still will review it, and I will pick up things going, this isn't exactly what I meant. This is not right. And then having that conversation. Now, this gets better, and I'm continually amazed at how well it does. But I think it's very imperative that anybody working with these agentic tools, and I'll say this in pretty much any session that I'm giving on this stuff, is you still need to understand how these pieces work to be an effective solution architect. Because the minute you sort of give up that power, then it's going to start going down the rabbit hole, start burning tokens on useless things. And I think we've all seen that, where we've created something and it's kind of like, no, 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 no. This is okay. Stop, because now you're burning tokens needlessly to fix something that's not correct. So this is again where our experience comes in, and our whole processing doesn't necessarily mean we know how to write the code line for line, but we should be in a position to be able to read it. So this is where I think the human in the loop is so critical, um, as part of this process. So this is why I'm not overly worried about losing my job. But if I was just purely a coder, meaning I'm used to someone giving me the requirements and I'll just go and code it, those are the people I think need to be worrying a little bit. You need to be actually understanding what's being built and why, because AI can do that part of it for me now. But the other part, the design parts, the interaction with the human empathy, how they're going to interact with the software, what is it going to do for them? What inputs and outputs, that's still where we need to be involved heavily in as a human. And maybe I know I preach this every week, but this is sort of my thought of it too. So this is where I think in terms of learning how to code is still critical, because if you know how to code, you know how the structures work. This way you can work better with AI going forward.
Yeah, yeah. And we've talked about this a lot before as well. So I feel like we're kind of kicking in open doors, but it is important. And I think that's why I keep coming back to it, because it's a very interesting conversation to have. And it's a conversation we need to keep having and to remind ourselves. And I know when I'm busy, that's when I'm the most lazy. And that's when I'll just give it a task to do and then grab it and just put it in there without reading it through, which I think is very human. But I also need to remind myself to do the hard work. We have a lot of interesting news this week. There's one news item here that I'm a bit cautious of, but I also want to mention it. So, the release planner was released, or there was an announcement this week or last week, that was pointed out by Yuka. And it says, starting July 2nd, 2026, feature updates for Microsoft Copilot Studio, Sales Agent, Finance Agent, and Service Agent will be published under the Microsoft 365 roadmap. This creates a single destination to discover what capabilities are coming next across Microsoft 365 core apps, Copilot agents, and more. And of course, Yuka is no longer an MVP, so where he gets this information needs to be public, and that's why we can also talk about it, because it means it's public. It's now official. And it is showing signs that maybe Copilot Studio won't be under the Power Platform umbrella anymore, but actually will be under the Microsoft 365 umbrella. And I think that kind of shows the direction that this is going in. I think we all need to embrace Microsoft 365 and WorkIQ and SharePoint and Teams and all of that as our kind of, that's the umbrella that we're now navigating under. And we see other signs of it. That makes me super excited. Did you see the new SharePoint apps?
I haven't, but tell me all about it.
So it's MCP apps, but for SharePoint. And it's built on SPFX. And so it's web parts, essentially, that I used to work with back in the day. So it's like blast from the past. Boop, boop. But it's essentially doing for SharePoint what we've done for Power Apps. It's enabling Copilot as a side pane to actually create user interface from SharePoint on the fly. So it's creating the same kind of experience where you can get your SharePoint experience inside your Copilot chat, and also by enabling this. And it's also, it happens automatically. So if you're on version, I think 2.24, then this will automatically be, your SharePoint site will then automatically be accessible through the MCP app in Copilots or in your Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is cool. Because then
Very
you can
cool.
see lists and news items, and you can actually do work. You can check that box and you can do that thing that you normally would have then had to navigate to your SharePoint site to do. SharePoint is immensely powerful. So it has a lot of great, there's a lot of great SharePoint implementations out there that has until now had to kind of not been baked into the whole world. And Teams has, of course, been the interface for SharePoint for a while and kind of forgot about SharePoint. But I love this new adventure. Maybe I'll go back to being a SharePoint consultant yet. We'll see.
Well, I think we're all like with the M365 as well. I think just the Copilot doesn't mean there's a separate, it makes it almost sound like Copilot Studio is kind of moving from one team to another team. It's really not the case. I think what we're really seeing is overall, the more the merging of Microsoft 365, Copilot, Cowork, Scout, and the Power Platform apps that we're used to becoming more and more in the user interface. We see this with the Power Apps MCP servers that we talked about a few weeks ago, how that's surfacing within Microsoft 365 and vice versa within the Power Platform apps as well. So you're right. I think we need to, like, if we're coming from the Power Platform side, we need to get a little bit more ramped up on some of the Microsoft 365, the Work IQ, and all of this stuff. I do realize I probably will have to move from Claude Cowork to Microsoft Cowork just to be on top of all of these things. But it is kind of very cool that there are some. So I think that's really the way to read this. It's not so much of a reorg or anything like that. The technology doesn't change. It's really more becoming more and more integrated. So eventually we just might sort of see the platform as a whole, whether it's called Power Platform or something else, be an encompassment of the business software that gets presented to the end users and has all these components and history and a lot of great technology kind of all beginning to kind of merge together. So I see this as a very positive move. It's just probably just more of a logistical thing that it's on the release planner there. I wouldn't read more into that in terms of anything political or anything of that sort. So yeah, it's definitely interesting and going to make our episodes where we talk about the release plans probably a lot more interesting and potentially longer.
Sure. Oh, well, we'll see. But I think it's important what you said. And I think it's more of a merging of the two things and embracing each other's stuff, right? I think that's very important. And it's a high time. And for me, it feels like home base. So for me, it's kind of my two worlds coming into one. And I love it. So, and also just a little bit of maybe then ESPC in Amsterdam in November, it's going to be even more important because that is Microsoft 365 focused in Europe. So if you want to start merging with the other community, if you like, then I think ESPC is a great opportunity and a great place to start. But it doesn't mean that we don't cover news from Copilot because we will now be Microsoft 365 boost. No, I'm just kidding.
I think we're just be
so
boost.
Your face, we'll and you're like, no, don't. It's like, no, we're not.
Or we just go And we just go to the foodie one that we talked about before, but that's
the foodie boost. Yeah. Okay, but
I did want to talk about.
Yeah.
Yes, I got really excited. This was a kind of news that came out on Friday about the Power Platform skills, which we've talked about before for building Power Pages. Of course, there's the Dataverse skills, but they released the ability, and this was something they hinted at very heavily or kind of talked about at EPPC as well, new skills to build Power Automate with agentic development.
Ooh.
And it was sort of the missing piece for a little while. We could do it. There are ways kind of to hack your way around it, but now with those skills, if you're using kind of, and I am gonna release a video this week talking about how as a maker you can set up the terminal and don't be afraid of it to increase your productivity. But this is where within these terminals we can start building out Power Automate flows. Now, I haven't had a chance to try it out, but we do see some of the community did dive in already and started to create some Power Automate. I hopefully, with a few little hiccups along the way, this is like brand new. It's still hot out of the oven. But I could sort of see this helping, with things like maybe with connection references and that kind of stuff, building out. So you're not just dragging all these boxes and putting try catches in there. Like this will kind of, help you build that out a little bit more intelligently. So I will be trying it this week, hopefully. But the other little nugget that came out, which a few people picked up on, and it is public, so you can actually go to the site and see this, but they dropped what they call the private preview of the mobile apps in there as well. And they did talk about this at EPPC at a few of the sessions, saying this is coming. Keep your eye open for this. So we don't have a lot of actual documentation or information, but it is there as the skills. So you can start building mobile apps on the Power Platform, but more native mobile, so it can interact with your phone, your geolocation, like all of these things that we're always really wanted with running apps on our phones. So stay tuned on that particular point, because that was sort of the hidden surprise in the box that came out.
Yeah.
So, but I was pretty excited about seeing that. I posted kind of a link on LinkedIn on Friday thinking, oh, I see this, just kind of threw it out there, and it got a ton of reactions over the weekend. So
that's really cool. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I noticed on the keynote as well, that I was like, oh, I'm really excited when this comes out, because this is going to be a big game changer for sure. Really excited to see more content around that next time, maybe. And there are a few. So on that note, we also know that there's a plugin to create Copilot Studio agents.
Yes.
And of course, with the new interface or the new built Copilot Studio, there's no real way to migrate from the old to the new. So if you want to do that, you still need to build it yourself. And then I saw a post from Luis Bebat on the CAT team. He presented 3 different resources this week on LinkedIn that they have created to help. So it is one kind of deep dive PowerPoint deck to really go through bit by bit a technical deep dive of what Copilot Studio is now and how it relates to how it worked before. So that's kind of your resource if you want to understand the workings of it in a really hard detail. And then also the new MCP to try out the new orchestrator. It has skills and connected agents, and it's a way to try that out. And also the plugin that I talked about. So it is a very good resource. Dive into it. There's going to be a link in the show notes to his posts and also a blog post that kind of talk about all 3 of these resources. So make sure you get in and start working with it if this is something that you need to know more about.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. So one other little, of course, there's some new Power Pages updates as well. The Power Pages team, as we know, they're continually coming out with new features and new things. Like lately, it's been server-side logic. They're coming out with new agents and that kind of thing. But they finally, and we saw this coming for quite a while, kind of more on the private preview side, but finally they're talking about it. About
2 release notes. It's been here for a few years, actually.
Yeah. I remember trying this, I think a year ago or so, and it was still very early days, but the ability of course, anybody who's worked with Power Pages, There's its security model, and then there's the Dataverse security model, which very similar, but they are completely different. And the reason they're different is in a Dataverse Power Apps, Canvas app, model-driven app, it's a system user. And on a Power Pages site, it is a contact that's interacting. So therefore, you needed a separate security system. Well, now these are becoming more and more aligned with each other. So anytime a new portal user, they'll still get created as a contact, but there will be a corresponding system user created if you enable this or when this becomes kind of GA. And then with that, you can start using the Dataverse security roles along with that. I think they're still sort of separate, but the same structure, the same kind of back end technical stuff. And then, so that's basically going to mean that eventually those roles are going to define. So if you configure your security model in Dataverse, it potentially can apply to the portal side as well. So that's definitely a huge move in the right direction. I think it's going to solve a lot of problems and just make the Power Platform in terms of Power Pages much more secure.
Yeah, and also it means that you have more context. So whenever a portal user would make a change at this data set or whatever it is, it would always say system user. But now actually you're able to track and trace that contact through to the system user to see which user it actually was that made the change. But also the wording here is a bit off for me. So I'm not really sure how automatic this is going to be and which way it's going to go. So it says web roles align with security roles. Roles defined in Power Pages align with Dataverse security roles, ensuring consistent role-based access control. Sure. What comes first? What aligns to what? And then how automated is this going to be? So, and also we saw another post, Michel Mendes actually alerted us to this, where you go in and you look at a table print emission today. Suddenly you could add a fetch XML in there and have your custom table permission. And they're like, okay, so do we, and the first question, of course, was, how can we add a dynamic parameter to this?
Yeah.
And then Nikita Polyakov is like, try adding it as a child table permission and scope that under an account or account. Like, of course, like, oh, yes,
Yep.
That's what we do. So that's also kind of ties into this and is very, very cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing that live.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you had another few things in here. You had something on the bottom here.
Yeah, this was a cool little thing, a little tool, because I work with a lot of clients and big ones. And then of course, when like some of the bigger ones, if I say, hey, can you enable the MCP server for me? If I go up and set up some of my agentic tools, it says, okay, you're going to need administrator permission to do this. Of course, a lot of IT departments are still a little like, no, we're like, still kind of working through the process and stuff. So this was an interesting tool by Luciano Spiguel, and he posted it about 3 weeks ago because we had it sitting here, and I did want to talk about it because it is a new tool for the Xterm toolbox. So hopefully he'll also create a version for the Power Platform toolbox as well.
Yes.
But what it basically does, it will go through, and then we've always had the metadata explorer within the Xterm toolbox, which you can get the schema names, the field names of all your schema and all that kind of thing. This is a lot like that, but what it will do, it will generate a structured markdown file of the schema names and everything within your Dataverse environment. So what happens is you run this tool against Dataverse, assuming you have access to read those tables and read the schema. And of course, if you're a system developer, I think of the system builder, whatever the role is, you do have access to that. And then it will export that as a markdown file. So if you are going to use the agentic tools that are kind of air gapped between your environment, you can actually have your agents refer to that markdown file to get the actual schema names and the actual table. So basically, let's say you want to build a fetch XML in Claude Code, you say, build me a fetch XML that's going to read my custom expense table and my expense lines and blah, blah, blah. Of course, if it's not connected through an MCP server to your environment, it has no idea what the schema names are. But then if you actually instruct it to say, no, I have the schema names in this markdown file, and you put that in your Claude MD file so it knows about it, then it can actually find the correct names. So it kind of works in the same structure as if you're doing early bound plugins in terms of creating the service utility and that type of thing. So of course, if you add new tables or new things, you probably have to regenerate this. But that was it was a cool little tool. And I've actually used this on a couple of projects where I don't have the full MCP access to the environments. And it works really cool. It works really great. So thanks, Luciano, for building this little handy tool. Very simple thing, but also very powerful. I wanted to kind of bring that to the attention of our listeners that or could be in the same boat. And this is just going to help you work a little bit better with those agentic tools and getting the schema names kind of sorted out as a reference there. So yeah, great work.
Yeah. But I think also that's kind of a talking about tokens and the way of working. I know a lot of I had a chat with my colleague, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm burning through so many tokens." And we looked, and he was like, "Yeah, because he's querying and going back to the source." And it's like,
Yes.
"How about indexing your files? How about making MD files of the huge files that you had? How about kind of making your work life a little bit easier for your agents so that don't have to burn through all those tokens just to find it?" So maybe the MCP server, and it's going back to what you said earlier as well, is that if you have restricted number of tokens that you can burn through, and you have to adhere to that. You cannot burn more than these amounts of token. This is the usage you have. Then you'll have to be more economic with how you use them. And so, yeah, maybe this is a good way to kind of get a bit leaner on your token usage.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a cool tool as well. So yeah, it's these are the types of things that there's still a huge, let's say it's a community, but a market for building XRM toolbox tools.
I know.
There's always
You're
new
not going to
ideas.
be a millionaire, but it's going to help a lot of people. So
Yeah.
you want to talk about the COE starter kit update? Because we killed it a few weeks ago, didn't we?
We did kill it. But this was your link, wasn't it? Or is it mine?
I thought it was yours.
No, so basically, it's by Kunal Sethi. He posted an article on LinkedIn, and basically about the for those of you who using the COE starter kit, of course, Center of Excellence. Of course, it was put out a couple years ago. Manuela was sort of championing that within Microsoft, but of course, it was always like an open source or a freebie tool. Never really an actual product line, even though they had release notes and things like this. But then, of course, the Power Platform admin with managed environment started, having a lot of these features built in. So eventually, in terms of support from Microsoft, the COE is kind of going away. Now, Kunal Sethi kind of put through a roadmap to help people go through if to kind of migrate or reassess their usage of COE and kind of move on to the new things and understand how to manage the tenants. So good little infographic there. A lot of interesting stuff. So yeah, we're going to share the link to that so you can see the 4-week action roadmap if you're a Power Platform administrator to make sure that you're hitting all of those check boxes if you're using the COE to kind of move to the new tools. So that's sort of how you said if you're a Power Platform admin and don't have a plan for the next 30 days, the next 30 days will plan themselves badly.
Yeah, that's true. That is so true, because you're going to bounce from one thing to another and just go down a rabbit hole. This is a 4-week action plan that you can actually follow. So that's very to the letter. And yeah, that's a good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thanks, Kunal. Thanks, Kunal, for sharing that.
Yeah. All right. So any more news items you wanted to cover before we kind of talk about the events you need to sign up for before we take the people to their summer holidays?
Yeah, let's talk about the events. We've chatted a lot about all the news and about the things we chat about on a weekly basis. So so now it's kind of the quiet summertime. So of course EPPC was sort of I think the closing event for the spring series of events. Of course, we had Color Cloud. We had, of course, was at Dynamics Minds and the EPPC. Of course, there was European Collaboration Summit. There's quite a few other events in between there, and then the summer hits and things kind of quiet down for a while, and then the fall is going to hit, and the hit's going to come on like a freight train. So basically, I know things that I'm attending, and of course, there's other events as well. I'm going to be in Montreal on August 31st, the Montreal Community Days. Again, this is talking about all things Microsoft and M365. And then going into September into Finland, what used to be the Finland, Collab Days Finland is now transformed into what they call the Hellish Summit because it's in Helsinki. So kind of naming things there. And of course, then it's all going to be fun with Lego and Legoland with Nordic Summit. So I'm really looking forward to that one. And then I'm returning to Baltic Summit this year as well, which is a really great event last year. The organizing team does such a really great job, a lot of interesting content, and they've expanded as well to have, I think, more days this year, from my understanding. And then there's also this thing called Scottish Summit. Have you ever heard of this?
I have. Bing, bing.
It's every I think they do it every 2 years. And sort of they kind of flip between South Coast and Scottish. So that returns to Edinburgh, one of my favorite cities in the world. So pretty keen about this. And then I got an email from my friend Joe Gill, and Joe was like, "Are you coming to Irish Power Platform Summit? It's just a few days after Scottish." So can't say no to Joe. He says he's got the pub booked already, so he's got his priorities sorted out. So keep an eye open for that if you're in Dublin around that time. It was a really good event. I was there 2 years ago. Joe puts on he's really great at gathering the community there around Dublin, around the Power Platform community. So definitely it's a cool thing to do. And then, of course, in the end of October is the Power Platform Community Conference in Las Vegas, which is the huge one, getting to talk to different Microsoft people and that kind of thing. And then I see that you've slipped in ESPC 26 in Amsterdam at the end of November. That again is the kind of what really was originally the SharePoint conference. But now, of course, with modern work and everything like that, and of course, so we talked about everything's merging more and more together. Definitely going to be a lot of great content there as well. So a lot of things going on. And I just wanted to quickly slip in after Scottish Summit. I am cooking up an idea with Franco and Sarah from Extra Life. So keep your eye open on the socials for that. That will hopefully be happening maybe the afternoon after Scottish Summit. So more info to come there.
Ooh, cliffhangers. I like it. Right. I think that concludes the list of events that you need to sign up on or up to. It is, I mean, it's easy to kind of, I don't know. We go to all of these events and we learn tons every time. So we share news and updates every 2 weeks, means we keep up to date on a lot of these things. And there's so many things that we don't mention because we don't have time. But there is a lot of things that we do know. And then we can share. But we learn things at these conferences all the time, not only from the sessions, but also from the talks we have in the hallways and the discussions we have in the evenings. And it's just to be connected and to know these people. And as I said, my colleague also came back with the feeling of, oh, I do know this. And he was so energized and so inspired. And he's now sharing with the team, even though he's on holiday, just pinging people going, that Copilot Studio thing we talked about, this is going to change it. This thing we talked about that isn't possible in modular maps. Have you seen generative pages? Ding, 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 ding. Because it fuels you, right? So I think coming back after summer, find one of these to sign up to, and then
and hug your favorite MVP, because you said that. Remember last time we talked about this guy, so he did actually reach out. What was his name?
I got a message on LinkedIn, and I love it when you guys do this. I'm gonna pull this up real quick.
Dave Scully.
Yeah. So we mentioned on a podcast last time, I met someone randomly that loved the show and just wanted to say how much they love the podcast. And also, actually, I did just randomly hug someone I saw on YouTube, earlier today. And I found it so cute and funny and adorable. I just mentioned it on a podcast. And then he listened to that episode last time and reached out to me on LinkedIn saying, I was the one you talked to. And the guy I hugged was Sean Astrachan. So beautiful.
Yeah, so big shout out to Dave for getting back to us on that. And of course, big shout out to Sean Astrachan. Like, he was in EPPC as well. And he was he posted about the fact that Leon Welicki came up to Sean and hey, I want to talk to you. I see your YouTube. So that was a big thing. I mean, of course, everybody knows Sean, right? And his YouTube. And of course, he does his untethered sessions as well. So Sean, you're getting the Boost Champion of the Week. That was a new thing we created. Funny story. So Melissa, who we awarded the first one, her and I went to the gym last week at EPPC, and she was listening to the episode as we were working out. So she heard it then. So it's like,
she got you double. She had double Nick going on.
She was so excited.
Oh, wow.
It was really cool. All right. So
you
we're
got
already
to see
hitting
her reaction when she learned she was the community champion. That's funny. Oh, that's awesome. We love you, Mo. We do love you. All right, guys. I think that's it for this episode, and we will see you in 2 weeks as normal. We don't take no vacations here.
Well, we take vacations, but we still do the podcast.
Yeah, that's true. Because
July 29th, I think, is the next time, and we'll see you then.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, please make sure you share it with your friends and colleagues in the community. And be sure to leave a rating or a review on your favorite streaming service. That makes it easier for others to find us. Follow us on social platforms and make sure you don't miss a single episode. Thank you for listening to the Power Platform Boost podcast with your hosts, Ulrika Ackerbeck and Nick Dolman. See you next time for your timely boost of Power Platform news and updates.